Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to another edition of Crimes of the Week International. Authorities in the Australian state of Victoria say that they are searching for an apologetic would-be burglar this week after he broke in through the roof of an elderly couple's home, only to come crashing down through the ceiling. According to reports, the incident began just after 9 a.m. on October 27th, when the victims, a couple in their 70s named Colin and Bev, were asleep in their home in the Melbourne suburb of Yarraville. All of a sudden, they were awoken by strange sounds that appeared to be coming from their roof. At first, the pair wondered if maybe a possum was responsible for the noises. Maybe one had managed to get into their attic. Well, it turned out that they were half right. Something had gotten into their attic, but it wasn't a possum. After getting up to investigate, Colin and Bev followed the origin of the noise, which seemed to be coming from an area in their living room. They were in the middle of trying to figure things out, when all of a sudden a pair of men's legs came crashing through the ceiling. Terrified, the elderly couple looked on in disbelief as the unknown intruder dangled there for a short time, before evidently realizing that he wasn't going to be able to make it back up into the attic and drop down to the floor. Once face to face with Bev and Colin, the unknown man apologized profusely, saying, quote, "I'm looking for something up in the roof." After giving this bizarre and, quite frankly, nonsensical excuse for the break-in, the man reportedly ran past the couple, scaled the fence in their backyard, and ran away empty-handed. Bev and Colin later told the media that they didn't try to stop him, partly because they were so stunned by what was happening, and partly because they didn't want to take their chances that he might be armed or violent. They later learned that he had gained access to their property by ripping several tiles off of their roof, but say that they have no idea how long he was there before he fell through the ceiling. At the time of this recording, police say that they are searching for the suspect, but don't have much to go on apart from Colin and Bev's descriptions. They say that the intruder had olive complexion, was wearing a white t-shirt, blue-gray track pants, a black beanie, and glasses. Anyone with information about the case is encouraged to come forward, and police say that they are particularly interested in speaking with anyone who might have CCTV or dashcam footage from the area at the time. Authorities in the Peruvian capital of Lima say that several members of an illegal drug operation are in police custody this week after officers disguised as comic book superheroes were able to move in on their hideout and make a surprise arrest. According to reports, the incident began sometime on October 29th, when 4 officers from the Peruvian National Police made their way into the district of San Juan de Lurigancho. They were there to target a specific house, which was believed to be the site of a sizable cocaine manufacturing ring. To not give away their operation, which was reportedly nicknamed Marvel, the 4 cops went undercover as superheroes, dressing up as Spider-Man, Captain America, Thor, and Black Widow. Well, contrary to most reports, it looks like the female cop might actually have been dressed as Catwoman, but that's neither here nor there, I suppose. Anyway, once in the neighborhood where the target house was located, the disguised officers pretended to be doing promotion for a local Halloween concert until everything else was in place. Once they got the go-ahead, they proceeded to bust down the suspect's steel door. The 4 alleged drug dealers inside apparently thought that the whole thing was a bizarre joke being pulled by some people that knew them. That was, until about a dozen backup officers also swarmed inside and started to place them under arrest. Following the successful bust, authorities announced that they had seized more than 3,200 small packages of cocaine paste, as well as nearly 300 bags of the purified drug. They also recovered a further 127 bags of marijuana. Police alleged that the drugs were going to be sold by the drug ring at a local park. At the time of this recording, all 4 suspects remain in custody. Authorities in New Tapei City, Taiwan say that a 27-year-old man is in the hospital, along with at least 4 of his neighbors this week, after he accidentally set off a large blast at his apartment complex, one that was allegedly caused by his large cache of illegal explosive materials. According to reports, the incident began at around 3:30 p.m. on October 23rd, when police and emergency workers received calls about a large explosion at an apartment complex in Sanxia district. They arrived to find that at least 3 of the buildings there had sustained significant damage. The blast had originated in the 4th-floor apartment of a 27-year-old man identified only by the last name of Liu. He had suffered serious injuries, including second-degree burns to 36% of his body, and was rushed to the intensive care unit at a local hospital. The entire floor that Liu's apartment was on had also sustained heavy damage, with reports stating that the elevator doors there had been severely deformed. That being said, the destruction hadn't been limited to the 27-year-old's building. Apparently, the explosion had also damaged at least 12 other apartments and 2 other buildings at the complex. Windows were blown out on all 6 of these buildings' floors, and at least 4 people in these apartments needed to be taken to the hospital as well, mostly due to injuries from flying broken glass. Tons more glass, as well as steel framing, pieces of furniture, and other debris from the blast were also found scattered all over the complex's courtyard. While the situation was initially suspected to be the result of a gas leak, that all changed when authorities got a closer look at Liu's apartment. There, inside a small storeroom, they discovered evidence that the 27-year-old had been keeping a large amount of fireworks, gunpowder, yellow smoke powder, smoke bombs, signal flares, and other explosive materials. Police now believe that this giant accident waiting to happen was ignited by static electricity, unwittingly created by Liu when he went to open the door. According to reports, this wasn't the only incriminating evidence investigators found at the scene either. They also allegedly recovered 3 air guns, 2 replica pistols, a modified handgun, and other equipment, much of which is prohibited and is believed to be linked to Liu's sketchy debt collection business. Reports also state that the 27-year-old is a known member of the Bamboo Union, one of Taiwan's largest organized crime groups, and has previous convictions for fraud, drugs, obstruction of freedom, and other crimes. While there are no charges against Liu at this time, this mostly appears to be because of his current medical situation. Police say that they are waiting for his condition to stabilize before moving ahead with an interrogation. Authorities in the Welsh county of Pembrokeshire say that a 24-year-old mother has avoided jail time this week after she crashed her car into a wall while speeding, then allegedly raced to get rid of incriminating evidence before helping her seriously injured passenger. The incident took place one night last June when 24-year-old Macaulay Boswell Morgan was driving around with 2 of her male friends in her BMW in the town of Pembroke Dock. Things were apparently fine until about 10:45 p.m., when the trio made their way onto a long straight lane called Fort Road. According to the 2 passengers, that's when Boswell Morgan started to gun it. The vehicle quickly accelerated until it had reached speeds of about 80 miles per hour, almost 3 times the posted speed limit on the road. Despite both of the terrified male passengers begging the 24-year-old to stop, she apparently ignored them, right up until she smashed into a low brick wall that was at the end of the dead-end road. The impact reportedly sent the vehicle sailing about 32 feet, nosediving down an embankment before finally crashing on its side on the beach below. Despite the intensity of the crash, both Boswell Morgan and the male passenger in the front seat were left unhurt. The same unfortunately couldn't be said for the other passenger, Cameron Quinn. He was trapped in the vehicle and suffered a number of horrendous injuries, including 4 skull fractures, a brain bleed, multiple bone contusions, a spinal fracture, and a broken finger. Despite the extremely serious nature of Quinn's wounds, according to investigators, he wasn't a priority for Boswell Morgan or the other male passenger. Instead of trying to get him out of the vehicle or call for help, their primary concern was getting incriminating evidence out of the BMW, including a bottle of vodka and a canister of laughing gas, Quinn was ultimately cut from the wreckage by emergency workers who were called to the scene by an off-duty police officer who ran over after hearing the crash. He spent the next 13 weeks in the hospital. In court this week, Boswell Morgan pleaded guilty to causing serious injury by dangerous driving. Following this plea, the judge in the case, Paul Thomas, said that had Quinn been killed as a result of Boswell Morgan's actions, she would have been sentenced to at least 7 years in prison. Instead, he gave her 2 years, suspended for 2 years, meaning that if she complies with the conditions of her sentence, she will not have to serve any jail time. The judge stated that the main reason was because the 24-year-old is a primary carer for her young son. Boswell Morgan has also been ordered to carry out 200 hours of unpaid work and has been banned from driving for 2 years. Representatives from Japan's Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department say that a 60-year-old man is facing serious charges this week after he reportedly tried to cheat a convenience store owner on a simple coffee purchase, and the situation escalated to the point where it nearly turned deadly. According to reports, the incident began sometime on the morning of October 25th when the suspect, later identified as 60-year-old Takehiro Masakura, walked into a convenience store in Ota, one of Tokyo's 23 special wards. After paying for a black coffee at the counter, Masakura headed over to the station where the machine was, as it was a sort of fill-it-yourself situation. However, instead of pressing the button for black coffee, the 60-year-old allegedly hit the latte button instead, which was a more expensive drink. Apparently, the convenience store owner noticed this and didn't take kindly to it, so he quickly went over to confront Masakura. The 60-year-old reportedly dodged his questions, saying that he needed to use the bathroom. Instead, however, he headed out towards his car to try and escape. Determined not to let Masakura get away, the convenience store owner chased him, grabbing onto the hood of the vehicle in an effort to stop him from leaving. Unfortunately, Masakura was allegedly not deterred by this and proceeded to drive away with the owner still on the hood. He sped down the road for several hundred yards before finally shaking the owner loose. When the man was thrown from the vehicle, he apparently hit his head on the road and was subsequently hospitalized with serious injuries. According to police, they were able to track down Masakura thanks to security camera footage at the scene. He's now facing charges of theft and attempted murder, though reportedly denies any wrongdoing. Authorities say that the difference in cost between the two coffees that started the whole incident was about 80 yen, which translates to about 54 cents US. However, they also pointed out that they were still investigating and acknowledged that it was possible that the owner reacted the way he did because he might have been ripped off by the suspect before. Authorities in Italy say that one person is dead this week and at least 5 other people are injured following a terrifying knife attack at a grocery store. According to reports, the incident took place sometime on October 27th at a Carrefour supermarket in the Milan suburb of Assago. It allegedly began when a 46-year-old man grabbed a knife off of one of the store's shelves and proceeded to attack several people. The man was disarmed before being taken into custody. Sadly, one person was killed as a result of the stabbing, and at least 5 others were injured, 4 of whom needed to be hospitalized. 3 of the victims were admitted in, quote, serious condition, while the final victim, a professional soccer player, suffered a stab wound to the back but is said to be recovering well. The athlete has been identified as 29-year-old Pablo Mari, a player for Arsenal in the English Premier League. Reports state that Mari was in Italy after being loaned to Serie A club Monza in the summer and was shopping with his family at the time of the attack. He underwent surgery after arriving at the hospital, but the stab wound apparently missed all of his vital organs. Unfortunately, due to the overwhelming amount of media attention devoted to covering Mari, additional information about the incident, especially details about the deceased victim, have been much harder to come by. However, some sources have identified him as a man named Luis Fernando Ruggieri. Luis was reportedly a worker at the grocery store where the attack took place and wasn't even supposed to be there because it was his day off. However, he had apparently volunteered to help out on the cash registers, something that his colleagues say he was known to do. Luis was apparently born in Bolivia, but was adopted by an Italian family and moved to the country more than 20 years ago. Those that knew him say that he was a hard worker and was always trying to improve himself and his life and career prospects. The suspect, meanwhile, has been identified as Andrea Tombolini. Authorities say that they believe he was suffering some sort of mental health crisis at the time and have ruled out any sort of terror-related motive. At the time of this recording, Tombolini remains in custody, though it's unclear if he has been charged. Authorities in the Indonesian province of West Java say that a young girl is dead this week and her mother is in critical condition after they were the victims of a horrifying machete attack carried out by the girl's father. According to reports, the incident began in the early morning hours of November 2nd when the suspect, identified only by the initials RNA, came home from a night out with friends. After arriving at his residence in the city of Depok, he got into a heated argument with his wife, identified by the initials NI. Apparently, this was far from the first time that the couple had argued about RNA being out all night. But on this particular morning, his wife became irate when she found out the reason he had been gone so long was because he was doing meth. Deciding that she had finally had enough, NI asked for a divorce. Initially, RNA reportedly left the house and went to a local mosque for morning prayers. However, when he returned at around 5:30 a.m. and discovered NI leaving the house with his 11-year-old daughter, KPC, he flew into a rage. He then began to brutally attack both of them with a machete. The entire horrifying situation allegedly played out within earshot of the couple's second, younger daughter, who was on the second floor of the residence at the time. She didn't dare come downstairs to intervene, though, out of fear for her own life. Finally, when RNA left the home for a second time, she alerted neighbors, who contacted the police. Tragically, the 11-year-old girl was pronounced dead at the scene. She had suffered horrendous slashing injuries to her body, and several of her fingers had also reportedly been severed. The girl's mother was still alive, though also suffered terrible wounds to her face, and is currently in critical condition at a local hospital. RNA was quickly arrested following the brutal attack, and at the time of this recording remains in police custody. Currently, he has been charged with non-premeditated murder, which is punishable by up to 15 years in prison, though that could reportedly change pending further investigation. Authorities in the Indian Capital Territory of Delhi say that they have arrested 2 people and are currently searching for 2 more after the brutal murder of a local couple and their domestic worker. According to reports, the incident began at around 9:15 a.m. on November 1st, when police received a call about a possible burglary at a property in West Delhi's Ashok Nagar neighborhood. However, when officers arrived at the scene, they quickly realized that they were dealing with something much darker. Inside were the bodies of 3 people who appeared to have been the victims of a brutal attack. The 3 victims were quickly identified as 38-year-old Samir Ahuja, his 35-year-old wife Shalu, and their domestic helper, 33-year-old Sapna. The property where the crime took place was a split commercial residential building where the deceased married couple had worked and lived. The ground floor was a beauty salon run by Shalu, while the upper floor contained a living space. Shalu and Sapna were found in the salon, while Samir was found on the upper floor. Both of the women had sustained fatal injuries to their throats with what appeared to be some sort of edged weapon, while Samir had multiple injuries to his face and head. The couple's young daughter had been left alive and asleep in another room on the same floor. Thanks to surveillance footage taken in the area, police were able to confirm that the suspects behind the attack had committed the crime somewhere between 8 and 9 a.m. that morning. This same footage showed that Sapna had arrived at the scene just 10 minutes after the assailants. It's believed that she was not one of the original targets, but was also murdered after walking in while the crime was being committed. Using this same footage, police were allegedly able to uncover the identities of the 4 suspects behind the killings. The following day, they announced the arrest of 2 of them, a pair of men identified only as 19-year-old Sachin and 21-year-old Sajit. The other 2 suspects, a man and a woman who are alleged to be the main conspirators behind the crime, are currently at large. It's said that they used to work with Shalu at her beauty salon, but were recently fired due to unprofessional behavior. They allegedly planned the brutal crime as revenge. At the time of this recording, the investigation continues. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a minute to thank our amazing supporters over on Patreon. As many of you are aware, our situation on YouTube always seems to be a bit uncertain, but our patrons help to ensure that we can continue to make content like this long term without having to worry as much about what surprises might be thrown our way. Plus, patrons also get access to 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. If you'd like to help support the channel directly, head over to patreon.com/crimezone to join. You can also find that link in the description below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and take care.